when we're talking about the labor trafficking or labor exploitation in the state of Minnesota, I believe it is important to really talk about the immigration reform. We need to talk about the living wage. We need to talk about the equality within the housing, equality in the healthcare. Often this immigrant population have been pushed aside because they are seen as a secondary to our society.
Because it's the hidden crime right now, and until we're able to really get into the different communities and assess it, we won't know.
Labor trafficking happens when someone is forced to work without being paid wages that were promised to them. Sometimes this practice is called debt bondage or indentured servitude. Those involved are often exploited. They feel helpless and wonder where they can turn to for help. If they end up on the street, they eventually find Catholic Charities. Now Catholic Charities, the Department of Homeland Security, and the St. Paul Police Department are working together to help victims of labor trafficking rebuild their lives and prosecute the person or persons involved in this crime.
And every individual have a complex situation, and then we started to communicate with the victim, and we really engage this two-way communication, because I believe it is important to have a victim-centered approach.
Catholic Charities partners with law enforcement agencies in order to hold those committing labor trafficking crimes accountable and help people caught up in labor trafficking schemes get the support and care they need. As part of a statewide task force, Catholic Charities is part of an all-hands-on-deck approach to solving the systematic problem of trafficking.
Along with the policy, my role with the Human Trafficking Task Force, Catholic Charity, my program, our program, is part of two Human Trafficking Task Force. One is Minnesota Human Trafficking Task Force, which is a larger task force that reaches out to greater Minnesota. And then we have the OVC, Office of Victim of Crime, Department of Justice, OVC, have awarded a grant for us to work with enhanced model with a local law enforcement, which has another task force called Gerald D. Vick Task Force.
Well, a good trend for us in the recent years has been that there's been a lot of support in service organizations and nonprofits. A lot of policy decisions have been made locally here in the state of Minnesota to help the human trafficking fight.
And we also have this larger group of individuals within this community who are eager to help. However, being part of Catholic Charities, I am very fortunate to have this program under Catholic Charities because I am able to utilize some of the existing Catholic Charities services, which has been wonderful.
Catholic Charities strives to honor the dignity of every person so that they become survivors instead of victims.
When they're escaping trafficking, they are desperate. They're without hope. They've been abused. They're alone. They're really people who are struggling to even come to terms with their own mental health issues around this. So it's really being in their corner for whatever their unique needs are.
So me being part of Homeland Security investigations, I don't have immigration authority, but I have authority to investigate criminal activity because we believe that there are labor trafficking situations that we can identify if we get into the right communities, the right populations in greater Minnesota as well as the metro area.
Legislation has been passed to help combat the crime of labor trafficking, but Hemlal Kafle and others think that more needs to be done, and it doesn't necessarily have to come from law enforcement.